pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could have a moment of silence for everybody out there protecting us, keeping us safe, giving us the luxury to be able to meet here and have democracy and work. Thank you. All right, approval of the minutes from July 7th meeting. So moved by Legislator Klein, second by Legislator Greco. Any additions, deletions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved. First resolution, PS1, is a professional service contract for the coroner's office. This is changed slightly due to some county law regulations and Dr. Sullivan, who is listed as our physician in there. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything on it, or?
We've always had an informal relationship with Dr. Sullivan over the years. Bring us more directly into compliance with county law. We're just looking to formalize that relationship to officially designate him, have the legislature officially designate him as a coroner's physician. And what we're looking to do is ultimately set a small stipend of approximately $2,000 to go with that. And as part of that $2,000, Dr. Sullivan is going to be performing some medical services for us to review certain cases, basically that are most likely natural causes, but for whatever reason the county physician, primary care physician, was reluctant to sign off on. But it's not something that we need a full-blown autopsy for. We've used him intermittently for that purpose. He's actually donated his time a few times a year for that purpose. So what we're looking to do is we'll formalize that and get him appropriate compensation for the services he has been doing.
Okay, so I guess what I'd be looking for is a motion to designate, appoint Dr. J. Sullivan of Pulaski as the coroner physician at $2,000, and then to instruct or have our department head and our administrator put together a budget modification to present to finance and personnel.
So moved.
Got a motion, do I have a second? Second by Legislator Emmons. Any discussion? Just so you're aware before we vote, Legislator.
Thank you for being
that's all right.
Report, I think.
So we have the physicians, the professional service contract for the coroner position. We're actually formalizing it as a appointment of the physicians for the coroner. $2,000 for Jay Sullivan. Okay.
I do. What have we been doing up until now? You've just been doing this informally?
We've been doing it informally. He's basically acted as the de facto coroner's physician, Mark. And a few times a year we've had cases where we knew it was likely going to be an underlying medical condition. Most often it's coronary. They present with coronary conditions. They have at the hospital. The hospital physicians will never pronounce or send a death certificate. So we had cases where we had Dr. Sullivan review the medical records, review the treatment records in the hospital. He's been able to sign off on the death certificate as being natural causes. Again, this relationship started under Don Dodd. The times he was paid, over the years, Dr. Sullivan out of graciousness said, "Don't worry about billing me, I'll just do it." But now that we're looking to have a more formal position, because the medical examiner's office does our autopsies, it's indicated that there may be circumstances where we might have to start turning away some of the cases that we have simply because they don't have enough pathologists and aren't able to retain enough people. And the volume of the number of homicides that have been occurring in Oswego County this year, they said there may be circumstances where they have to turn it away. So I just want to make sure that we have a system set up to get that as more formalized.
But if it is suspicious, what happens then?
No,
There's some reason for suspicion.
Right. If there's any reason for suspicion, anything like homicide, MBA, suicides, those are automatically going to get autopsies. Those will be sent down. again, this tends to be witnessed episodes where generally it's the wife or somebody says, hey, he was complaining about tingling in his arm, tingling in his chest, EMP's called, EKG and everything indicates it's likely an MI. They present that, but the ER doctor says, look, it's the first time I saw him was when he came in, they will never sign. And then the physician says, geez, I haven't seen him in a year and a half, I don't know. So it's in situations, and if there's any, and I think there was one a handful of years ago where Dr. Sullivan says, maybe this should be imposed in autopsy. So we talked to the MD's office and we sent it down. So again, this will be for the clear-cut medical situations.
So they won't refuse if we actually have. Is that
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
So,
Good question.
just to recap before I call for a vote, what we're doing is for PS1, instead of going forward with the fee schedule that has been proposed there, we're going to appoint Dr. Sullivan as the coroner physician with a stipend of $2,000 a year. And there will be a budget modification to accompany it that'll be prepared for finance and personnel to come within the budget.
And Terry, if I can clarify, and that $2,000 for the idea, looking at the fee schedule,
Correct.
how likely it is that we already do some, we're trying to line that up. If for some reason we get huge influx from the MD's office where we're going beyond that, I may come back to you and say, we need to adjust that amount to make sure we're being fairly compensated. But that should approximately line up with what we actually need.
And it's kind of uncharted territory, so we have to figure out what we're going to use. All right, so all in favor of the motion that was set forth, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's approved. Okay, thank you. PS2 is an intergovernmental memorandum of agreement. This is with New York State. This is something that, for Mutual Link, that we've had in place. We just found out we had some repairs that needed to be done and some things, upgrades and such, and they paid the full shot of it. So virtually at no cost to us, a service that we're entering into in New York. So can I have a motion on this? Motion by Legislator Emmons, second by Legislator Mangano. It's easy for me to say. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's approved. All right. PS3 is a budget modification for the Sheriff's Department. This is revenue from Novellis. This is to accept $8,000. Motion by Legislator Trudell, second by Legislator Chesborough. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Stands approved. Something strange coming around here that we're not used to, but we do have a budget mod that we're back to signing now. So. All right. PS4. Resolution awarding a professional service contract for both E911 and EMS. This is to appoint Jordan Holliday at a cost of $7,500 for the remainder of this year. Entertain a motion to get it on the floor, then I'll ask both Kevin and Renee for some more details. Motion by Legislator Mangano, second by Legislator Greco. Who wants to go first?
So Dr. Markham is the doctor who has served as our medical director for EMS last year and the first part of this year. He's decided that he'd like to retire and scale back on some of his responsibilities. So he no longer works at WellNow, no longer has the malpractice insurance that is required for this position. We are a core sponsor for the Bureau of EMS, New York State Bureau of EMS. We're required to have a medical director that is kind of the end-all decision maker as far as anything medical in our EMS courses, oversees our assessments, deals with any lab issues, skill issues, etc. Also serves on our county CQI, which is our continuous quality improvement. So when we meet together, we're looking for trends in good and potentially things that can be done better as far as our care provided to our constituents. So they are a part of that committee as well for both EMS and 911. So that's the EMS side of it. I did meet with them the other day. We had some, we had said, how much is the malpractice insurance? You could potentially put in a bid for the RFP upcoming next year and offset some of that cost. The reality of it is, when we went out to bid for an RFP a couple years ago, we got 0 respondents. So we went and actively searched for a medical director who would be willing to take us on. Every EMS and fire agency has to have an emergency physician as their medical director. They have to have knowledge of the pre-hospital care component. So often these guys serve for medical directors in multiple agencies, as is the case with Jordan Holliday. One of the agencies that he is medical director for is our ESU. So he's young, he's entering the field. I think we have a better chance at maybe longevity with him. So and I think he has a good overall perception of the county. He works at Upstate Medical. So he sees the hospital aspect, he sees the pre-hospital aspect, and just a lot of different disciplines. So that's what's required on our end.
Yeah, so 911 medical director is directly responsible for our emergency medical dispatch protocols. So all of the medical questions that we ask on every 911 call, as well as going through and signing off on some of the options that we have within our Pro QA, which is what the software that manages our emergency medical dispatch protocols. So it's very important that we have a current medical director to sign off on those things in case there's any questions, or somebody doesn't have a positive outcome from a 911 call, and our questioning or our protocols are brought into question. The software vendor, Priority Dispatch, will support us, but it's largely falls back onto the medical director signing off on those protocols. So the other benefit that we have is normally you change a contract mid-year, it's you've got to worry about money and stuff, but the doctor was willing to accept the second half of the contract at contract value, I should say, for the rest of 2021. So I have no fiscal impact.
So when we budget, will we be budgeting at the same rate, or are we looking to get a lower rate? Because I know that was a little high last year.
Well, it was the first time it's gone up in a while. I doubt it will go down, but we did inform him if he has any intentions of applying to the RFP that we put out. If there was going to be a difference, that he would kindly inform us of that now during our budget season, so we could appropriately budget for that.
Question for Kevin. What's the protocol for updating those plans? In other words, you say you have to have a doctor sign off. You must have a plan in place now signed off by a doctor, correct?
Correct.
So how often does that protocol get updated and changed, and based on what? Something goes wrong? So
the company that performs the software, writes the software, they actually have a association of emergency medical dispatch, emergency dispatch, that they work very closely with, and that's a group of doctors and nurses and people that practice, first responders and stuff, that meet. I think they meet quarterly, and they discuss different things. During COVID, they were meeting like every other week, talking about the different stuff and changes and stuff that we're working on. But they actually come up with the protocols, and then they actually push them out to us, and then we need to run them by our medical director and keep them apprised of what changes the software vendor actually suggests. So, thank you. Yep.
When we bring on a new medical director, we'll go through all of those. There are certain things, like he mentioned, that they can make additions or changes to. For instance, high-risk pregnancy. The software suggests certain things to be counted as a high-risk pregnancy, but the last medical director added a known preeclamptic diagnosis, so that ups the priority of the call. So they have the ability to modify it. And then part of our continuous quality improvement, if we found that there was something that was essentially being toned out as a Bravo, and we're finding that maybe it needs to be elevated to a Charlie based on our quality improvement, then that's something we could go to the medical director and say, here's what we're seeing. Dr. Markham was influential during COVID as far as they have an emerging infectious disease protocol. So we went to him and said, this is what we're seeing in the county. We think it's time to engage that protocol, so that they started asking additional questions related to infectious disease. So, and then when we saw things scale back and get better, he was the one to make the call that we can not ask those questions anymore.
So, this is related, but kind of for everybody, departments. So is that the only medical director you have?
Correct.
And that's the only one that you have between EMO and EMS?
We're going to be in a very similar situation when
Jail.
at some point, Dr. Is our medical director, is going to at some point not want to do this and essentially volunteering.
I mean, our intention also is to put out a new RFP for next year, for the later part of this year, so we have it in place for January.
What we could do is we could take a look and see whether all these positions are compatible and there's no conflict of interest.
So what we're
Putting a
trying to
doctor
do
on
is
staff.
have one doctor on staff to do all this because we're running into and it's tough to get a doctor to pick up, 15 grand here, 2 grand here, 30 grand here, whatever it might be.
In the different studies, it needs to be an doctor. So I don't know if that's the
Well, I
requirement.
think,
Because we did look at, we worked really well with Dr. Christina Lipke during, COVID, and we explored, I sent Dr. Sullivan the requirements and kind of the role and responsibility and his assessment of his skill set was that I'm not sure I fit that.
well,
So,
and part of the problem is that, the profession, just like all your other professions, there's slim pickings of people who want to do these types of extra things, so that's why
Well, another group director could also be an employee,
Yeah.
part-time, then the county will indemnify them.
I guess what we need to know is what are the qualities that you need in your 3 positions and see if there is anybody out there qualified.
I know yours is going to be a little bit more in-depth than just the director position, so yeah. All right, well, we continue. So, yes,
Just to clarify, this is more of a consultation type of a person. This isn't somebody that is like on call, that, gets called in the middle of the night that there's a situation. Yes or no?
correct.
correct. We did ask, when we reach out to you, usually it's because we need you, please call us back within 24 hours, is what we're stating. Is
We're not gonna call this person and say, we need you to go to an incident, and help out with that development.
Okay, that's, I'm just wondering, because if he's working in upstate, he's out of the county, that's all it's, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Stands approved.
Thank you.
Next piece of business that we have to do is establish the salary for an E911 dispatch coordinator. Why is the name of that?
Finance and personnel has jurisdiction over establishing salary, but there's nothing prohibiting this committee from discussing it and endorsing.
Well, we're looking to give it a $29,000 savings. The position, correct?
Over the year.
Over the
Yes.
year. Anybody have an issue with that?
I said no.
Okay.
Are you having any trouble keeping people?
Yes. We,
Why don't you give your report, Joe?
you want me to just jump into it?
Yeah, just do it.
To answer your question, yes, we have had another full-time employee transition over to part-time. Luckily, we were able to keep her on part-time, which is extremely helpful. But we've got the rumor mill going around. There's one person that is on their second interview, so probably will be leaving shortly. That's a full-time employee, and then there's another full-time employee that has been talking about retiring. So that'll leave us, at the moment, we have 3 vacancies. On the new telecommunicator list, I have 3 people total on it. One of them is a family friend that said, hey, take the test, but she's not going to accept the position by you because nothing's changed on her end just yet. So I know that I have no more than 2 people at the moment that I can appoint or that I can bring on, I can hire. So that's going to be a challenge here soon, unfortunately. There is another telecommunicator exam scheduled for January, but we won't have the results until May, beginning of June next year.
How much is it paid?
Is
Is it the salary the problem, or is it just the lack of interest in general?
the biggest reason why we're losing people is the schedule.
Schedule.
Doing a 12-hour rotating swing shift is difficult. It's tough on family. It's tough on the person themselves. So we've been talking about trying to look at some options there. I haven't really looked at the schedule since I've come on board with the past month and a half or so. We've been starting to have some discussions. But we also are one of the lowest paying 911 centers in the region also. So pulling some information together on that, and but anytime hoping to have some discussions.
Consider Clyde.
Yes. When you say lowest paying, how much lower? Not percent, dollar.
I don't have all of that information. I know we are, I think it was $1.60 lower than Cuyahoga County, but they just recently increased their rate for starting telecommunications.
All right, and also, there's, you said you have a swing shift and like that, 12-hour shifts?
12-hour shifts, yes.
Is there a pay differential for the people who work nights?
You do get shift differential for nights, yep, and weekends.
And is it adequate?
Off the top of my head, I haven't compared it to other shift differentials, so that's something I'm looking at as well. So, I'm working on that entire employee package. So, and I think that's something that probably goes through negotiations through the union more so than anything I can speak to. But we gotta get more.
We're in negotiations now, so yeah.
Yep. So we'll say I saw a press release from Dunkin' Donuts that they were hiring at $19 an hour, and I think we started at 17 something. So, yeah. So you can go work at Dunkin' Donuts for coffee, or you can pick up number one. So, yeah.
Okay.
As far as other updates, we did see a pretty decent increase in our calls this past month. This is actually on the news report. I forget what the percentage increase was, but I think we ended up with over last year an extra 300 calls over June of 2020. 2020 was a little bit of an exception, but we had ramped back up to normal pre-COVID numbers at that point in time. So to see a jump like that in June is significant for us, and it directly corresponds with our answered calls within 10 seconds, which we were at 80%, which the goal is to be at 90%. So we didn't have too many vacations or training or anything going on, and I think we were only one position down at that point in time, but we saw a pretty good increase in numbers in the month of June. So July looks like it ramped back down a little bit. So. Beyond that, the biggest thing we did in June, spent a lot of time working on the radio system. There was a major system upgrade that is performed every other year. That was mostly in the month of June. And our communications coordinator position was extremely vital to working on that and making sure that we had everything up and working and up a ton with communications, so that that position continues to pay for itself, as well as he's been starting to do installations and service work for fire departments and EMS agencies across the county. So we are starting to see some revenue come back in from that. I think that's probably everything to note in my report.
Good. Any questions? All right. On to probation.
Thanks. Just hit some of the main points of the report. Our supervision numbers are pretty much staying the same. They're pretty stable at this point. However, our investigations jumped quite a bit in June from May, so hopefully at some point they'll probably come back to supervision going up too. But kind of still, the whole COVID thing is still really affecting us as far as the courts getting up to speed and all that. We recently had two officers complete a firearms instructor course in the sheriff's department, so that'll be beneficial to us because we'll have two more people on staff. We have a third actually we've had, so we'll have 3 for training and qualifications as far as firearms. We'll be able to help the sheriff's department too as far as having more staff. That'll be helpful. Staffing, I brought up last time, I think, that currently we've got 3 vacancies. I have another officer retiring in October, and another officer is expressing interest in moving to another department, so I'm going to have a lot of openings.
Good question for you, and maybe you don't have this, don't expect you to, but the restitution, what's the total dollar amount of restitution that your department is charged with collecting?
In a year,
Yeah.
roughly 400,000 probably.
Is it gets turned in, or is that what you're?
That's what we collected.
That's what you collect.
Yep. I think 2020 was around 420,000.
But is there a way of like saying how much is owed in restitution countywide and what you've collected? Like, I'm sure there's.
I don't have those figures. Yeah, our system, we can pull back the report.
I'd just be curious to see what it is, because I hear a lot of people that.
Don't get their money.
Yeah.
Our restitution clerk, well, we have cases we collect in restitution. They're just restitution cases that are ordered by the court to pay restitution. Then we have probationers that pay restitution too. As far as just cases collecting restitution, I think we have a little over 500 right now.
I'd just be curious if you had it.
No, we can, yeah. Obviously, it's hard to collect money from a lot of people they don't pay, and all we can do is notify the court and say they're not paying. If the court doesn't do anything, they don't do anything.
Okay, emergency management.
Oh, a lot different from last month. The biggest thing was the medical director getting that underway. We had asked for an extension on our SHSP 2018 and was granted to the end of December. We've got some equipment that we just can't get yet. We're saying it's COVID related, so we're hoping to have that. We've done 2 super dirt week planning meetings. As of right now, their plan is underway that they're going to do 100% capacity. So we've got another meeting on that in a couple of weeks. Working with the IAP with the Oswego Fire Department to update that from the last time it was done. We didn't have super deep rates last year, so the IAP needs to be updated. What else are we working on? We've got one more planning meeting for upcoming evaluative exercises for the radiological plan. We should have that finalized this week. We're steadily planning that, as well as the evaluative exercise at the reception center. So that's on as for October. So we've got some radiological exercises coming up. We are also scheduled an EOC training as well, which is our Emergency Operations Center training, which we have not done since I've been in emergency management. So it'll be good. And we've got some new people coming on. The city boasts has some people that will play in our EOC. So it'll be good to have them come down. So that's just going to be an in-person training for a couple of days. It's the same session, 2 days in a row. Facilitate everyone meeting and come down there and still have enough space for it. But not how much more than that. Yes, NPGS.
So about that. Sure. That was the supplemental planning grant that we got for COVID related expenses. That was what we used to build the health department vaccination trailer. So this will go in our report next month, but Friday we were able to bring it to the letterer. So it's in the process of getting lettered right now, and the grant closed on the 31st. So that is done. I'm so excited. But
we're getting the budget $2 this whole thing.
Yes.
We did a good job this year.
Yes, we're giving them back $2, but we're going to ask Jan, just so you all are aware, we're going to ask Janet when that gets finished being lettered. They've had it out already. They've deployed it without that lettering, but hopefully a news release will be coming on that. So it's very exciting. They love it to work out of. That's really all we have.
Anybody else? How about the DA? You got anything for us?
Now, we basically got trials after trials after trials since the beginning of April. This is every 2 weeks we've had trials. We've got them scheduled through the balance of August, and through September. It's taken up a lot of time, a lot of resources to the office, but the trial's going well, we're getting good outcomes, so it's trying to catch up on those.
How's the bail reform thing coming along?
I think you know the answer. Again, a lot of people not showing up to court. Again, the ones we're catching, and I mean, I think the sheriff could probably speak more to that. I think it's putting a lot of imposition on law enforcement, first responders directly. It's not going well. And frankly, we're seeing the result that a number of people are picking up multiple charges. I had a guy who got screened for drug court a couple of weeks ago that I denied because I think he had 16 arrests since January of last year. That was from January to April of this year. And we're seeing guys who are just picking up double-digit arrests that are still out of the pending. But because they're non-violence, they're thirds for breaking into somebody's garage or shed or store, written larcenies that are non-violent, drug offenses that are non-violent. So they're just getting turned out and picking up multiple felonies.
Affecting pretrial release too, I can say. At one point we had 120 maybe on pretrial, now we're in the 40s.
Sheriff, anything for us?
Our biggest issue right now is vehicles. We're got 14 vehicles sitting in parking lots waiting for chips. We gave them all. Also, we took over the school resource officer program for the city of Oswego come fall, so I'm sure that'll be a best thing. That was at the request of the mayor and the chief. But frankly, we just do it cheaper and better, with our program that's better certification. And that program that Deputy Gator set up is now through the State Sheriff's Association. It's going statewide. He's actually on the committee with the Sheriff's Association. Training school resource officers, and DCJS is going to require that training. Probably going to turn into a full-time job for him. Actually, he retires, but it goes on. Other than that, things are well.
Good. All right. Nothing more. I'll entertain the motion.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.